Welcome. I'm Bill Pickett with LGP Law Firm here in Yakima, Washington. This is Homegrown in the Heart. This is a podcast where we will talk to hopefully young people who are homegrown in the heart of Washington. That's that little piece of real estate that goes from Canada all the way to the Columbia River. And we're going to talk to people who have grown up here, people who were born here, people who have moved here. And they're going to tell us a little bit about themselves, about what's significant to living in this part of the state and how it's impacted them, and a little bit about their story. Today, my guest is Jack Pickett, somebody that I have known his entire life because I'm his father, and it's a wonderful privilege, Jack, to be here with you today and to learn a little bit about what you have done with your life since growing up here in the Yakima Valley, and about the great things that you've been off doing and the things that you're going to do in the future. So welcome to the show.
Glad to join.
Let's talk to Jack a little bit about what the future holds for a young guy from the Yakima Valley who's gone out into the world, and he's worked through some heavy education. And tell us a little bit about the plans, if you know what they are or what they might be going forward.
I really don't, which is kind of
wrong answer.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It's kind of a unique situation for me to be in, actually, because it's, for most of my life, it's kind of felt like I had a pretty concrete plan. The next step was always very clear. You know, I mean, I was going to go to college after high school, and then after college, I was going to go to law school. And that seemed like a really long plan when I was in high school, because it was, 4 years, 3 years. That's 11 years of education to get from point A to point B, back at the outset of this journey, I guess you could call it. And it went by in the blink of an eye, and now I'm at the end of it, and I don't actually have my next steps planned out, which is sort of a unique, like I said, situation for me to be in, but I am confident that it will figure itself out. I'm open to whatever comes my way. I know that I want to practice law, and that's a good start for sure.
That's super positive.
Yeah, and I can even go further than that and say I know I want to litigate, which is that, that narrows it down even a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I take the bar in February, so I have a couple of months, until then to get a little bit more direction, and then it'll, takes an insufferably long time for your bar results to come back, obviously. So
pins and needles.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, I've got some time, not a ton of time, but I've got some time. So I'm just really thoughtfully kind of considering what my options are, what might be a good fit for me going forward. But I do know I'm going to put the law license to use. Just how yet is still up in the air.
It's a good place to be. That's a good place to be. And I think, kind of looking back over, 25, 26 seasons now practicing law, in that spot where you are right now is a really sweet place to be, because lots of options open. And finding that option and exercising and walking into that door where it's the right place, where you were built and created by God to be, is a huge deal. The other thing you said that I thought was really, it struck me, is when you talk about how quick it goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for any young guy or girl, man, woman, youth, Yakima native, who's maybe watching this and they're getting ready to go out into the world. They're going to go off to college. And you think back for a moment about your time. You went from Yakima over to the University of Washington. What are some words of encouragement that you'd give to young people now that are right now preparing for that first step outside of the valley?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that you know, I feel like my upbringing was kind of a secret weapon in a way, going out into, the broader world. Because some of those values that got instilled were really helpful for me to have sort of a compass or a North Star when navigating, new and as yet unexplored territory. So, and whether someone leaves Yakima who has always lived here, or they're staying here but just embarking on a new endeavor, I think all of those things are really helpful. And so I think my piece of advice would be to not turn your back on everything that has made you who you are from here. One of the things about growing up in Yakima is that a lot of people spend all their time growing up in Yakima complaining about Yakima and
Right.
dying to get out of Yakima.
Right. Yeah.
And that's fine and normal, and Yakima is not without its flaws, that's for sure.
Right. Right.
But I think if you just objectively look at what is offered to someone's life here versus what's offered in another place, it's very clear that there's a lot of benefit to coming from a town like this. And so one of the things that I'm thankful that I learned pretty quickly after I left was that I'm actually really thankful to come from here.
Yeah.
I was one of the people who, like George Bailey says in It's a Wonderful Life, I was going to shake the dust of this crummy little town off my boots.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of shaking, and the point is that I quickly learned that I'm thankful for my time here. I'm thankful for everything I learned here. Thankful for all of the people who are here, who are rooting for me when I'm elsewhere.
Yeah.
And thankful to have a place to come back to that feels like a retreat from, my life, which can be stressful and crazy. And,
Right.
there's a lot of warts to big cities as well.
One of the things, Jack, that, and I hear this come up all the time in conversation with folks a little bit on, I want to say folks on the more senior side of life, and that is Yakima has this difficult time growing up our kids, instilling our values, and then they run off to the big cities and we never get them back. And we never get them back. And you can talk to older folks who will say, well, here's the problem. This is the issue. This is what we need to do. But I don't often hear people talk to young people about what it is that they'd like to see in Yakima that they would find appealing. What is it that would attract them to even contemplate or think about returning to their roots, returning to the valley, and blessing our community with all the skills and the education and the good things that they have taken in while they've been away? What are some things that you, I think, find encouraging, or things that you're hopeful of even, that you'd like to see in the valley?
To maintain its core character, all the things that make Yakima so unique and special, and it's really special history and its tradition. To me, it's always felt like kind of this oasis in a western desert, and the Palm Springs of Washington.
There you
right? Go. All of those things about Yakima that we all know and love about Yakima. Those need to stay, and we need to not lose sight of those things for sure. Because nobody wants to live in just another cookie cutter town.
Yeah.
You want to live somewhere that feels like a unique community. And Yakima is really, fortunately, on that front, a robust, unique community. Part of, I think, having a really dynamic and attractive community for my generation is one, all that unique kind of character that I just talked about, but two, being dynamic and open to change and looking for improvement wherever possible. And sometimes those can be competing interests, those two things, but I think a lot of the time they actually go hand in hand. And I think Yakima has virtually limitless potential to continue to grow upward and outward, physically, but also to grow in terms of the maturity of its economy and its diversity and all of those things that can really make a community really thrive. So I think my advice on, the second piece of that would just be to be open, like we should protect and cherish what has made Yakima so special for so long, but we should also be open to new ideas that will bring different things that will make it even more attractive to young people.
Right on. Okay. So let me back up a little bit in the sort of the storyline here. A lot of young people that I see in the Valley have a desire to be active, and I mean active politically. Let's cut right to the chase. They want to be active politically because they believe that political activism, if that's whatever that word may mean to some, but I mean it in a positive sense. Active and engaged, politically engaged. That's probably even a better word. A lot of people would like to do that. You've had a journey from, the Yakima Valley and West Valley High School that has started here and allowed you to become engaged politically with your community and issues that matter. And then that's taken you off to D.C. What advice would you give or some words of encouragement that you could give to young people in this valley who also are seeking that same sort of opportunity, or maybe they're interested in that trajectory where they get involved at a local level politically to be engaged and care about the community in positive ways? What encouragement could you offer for those folks? And as you feel free to share some of your own story and how that happened for you.
I'll start by saying that if you want to get involved in political activism or anything like that, coming from a town like this, which I encourage people to do, it's a really important thing to do. Our entire system of governance and our entire society depends on people of conscience and character getting involved in our political process to kind of drive the ship in the right direction. It's how the country was founded. That's how it's stayed alive for these 200 plus years, and that's hopefully how we're going to keep it afloat. That said, I think there's two really important things that everyone needs to keep in mind when setting out upon a journey of political engagement, which is that you need to stay true to your principles and your values and your morals. Because if you don't have those, it's really kind of a charade and there's no point to anything that follows, right? The second thing is that you need to actively practice humility. So much of what I think we see in the political dysfunction of this country in this moment in history comes from people who lack humility. And that lack of humility, I think, can take a lot of different forms. One of them is, what immediately comes to mind when you say lack of humility, which is, the big ego, the puffed up chest. I want this to all be about me. That's, I think, one type of lack of humility that plagues our political system. But the other kind, which I think is maybe a little bit more insidious and maybe more destructive overall, is this lack of humility that tells people of conviction that I am never wrong. And you can't not never be wrong. You're going to be wrong. That's just like a fact of being a human being.
Yeah.
And whether you're engaged in politics or not, you're still a human being, and you're going to be wrong. And I think training yourself to recognize that that is the case, and to recognize when maybe I'm wrong on this one, is really important. And it actually, I think, would create a lot of unity for people if we could all more readily self-identify places where we might be wrong and exhibit a little humility about the things that we might not know. And that someone else might have something to teach me about something that I don't know everything about. So that would be my, I guess, encouragement to anyone looking to get involved in politics, which is, do it, stick to your principles, because that's the whole point, and have humility. And, I've had a interesting journey from, Yakima to Washington, D.C. And I've learned a lot, and I have not always managed to stick to my own advice on those issues. But I'm working on them, and I'm trying my best. But I've had a pretty diverse experience that has really led me to kind of those conclusions, which is, I started out in Mr. Brennan's AP government class.
Okay. Go Rams.
Go Rams, that's right. Watching footage from the 2012, I think, Republican National Convention. And I just remember thinking, wow, that would be really cool. Like, how do you even go to that? Like, is it a concert? Like, they have tickets that you buy, or what's what's good with that whole thing?
Right.
It looks fun.
Yeah.
So, we got in touch with our local GOP chair, and Benin McDonald, who is just a treasure. And
God bless Benin.
And next day she was at our kitchen counter, telling us all about how, if you want to go, here's what you do, and she just she's one example of a lot of people along the way who have just opened their arms and their hearts to me and our family, and seen a young person who wanted to get involved, and not only encouraged it and helped guide it, but we're excited about it, which is, I think, really, really neat.
I was going to say, that's a really important piece, isn't it? To find a mentor of sorts, an older person who's a more mature senior person that's willing to come alongside young people. And I think that's one of the special things about this valley, because we do have folks that are willing to do that and sort of guide you along toward, here's the process that you can follow to go and do some wonderful things, like being a delegate.
Yeah,
instance, right.
Right.
Served in that capacity.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's where it took me, and it took me to being a delegate to the national convention, and which was pretty cool. Actually, it was every bit as cool as I thought it was going to be, watching the footage from Mr. Brennan's AP government classroom at West Valley, and then I've had mentors who have taken a chance on me and let me work on a statewide campaign, and who have brought me all the way to Capitol Hill, and all the way throughout my career so far. There have been people older and wiser than me who have in a lot of instances taken a chance on a young person, and chosen to invest in me. And that's really kind of the key, I think, not just in politics. I think in pretty much anything you do, if you don't have people who have been through it before, and you don't have them rooting for you, and sometimes they're gonna push you up the hill, sometimes they're gonna drag you up the hill, but nevertheless always saying, come on, let's go, let's do this, and here's how. It's really, I think, pretty hard. And I've been really fortunate in my career so far that I have consistently had people who have been rooting for me, mentoring me, pushing, pulling, encouraging me along.
You spent a little time in this vein here, and I've got another area that I want to get into here in a minute, but you spent a little bit of time on a United States Senate campaign, right? And you, if I remember right, and with a lot, as with a lot of things you get involved in, uh, I don't remember you having a whole lot of election race experience.
Certainly not.
But you got involved in a Senate race. Tell us a little bit about one, how that process happened, and then some of the things you learned about people in
Yeah.
that process.
Well, I think this is actually a really good example of, you know, that concept of having a mentor.
Okay.
So and actually, I don't know, it's kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. Everything just kind of flows together and comes from something else. So, at the national convention in 2016, I had the privilege of meeting Susan Hutchison, who was the Washington State Republican Party chair at the time, and so obviously she was the head of our delegation to the national convention, and got to know her a little bit there, and kept in touch, after that, and obviously Washington had this big Senate race in 2018, and lots of folks had said, "Oh, I hope she'll throw her hat in the ring. You know, she'd be a great person." So, having met her and having been just so impressed and like starstruck by her in having met her, I was like, she has to run. This will be awesome. Well, sure enough, she got in the race, and so I reached out and said, I want to help. Can I help? Please let me help. And in just, like an act of that mentorship, she was like, yep, come on, let's go. Gave me a job. And I got to do a lot of really cool things on that campaign that I probably had no business doing, quite frankly, but Susan believed I could do them. And so we traveled the entire state. I think we put about 35,000 miles on my car.
Mm-hmm.
That
you were
year
everywhere.
We hit all 39 counties
Yeah.
in Washington State, most of them multiple times. I got to go to everything with her, and we did not win, which was tough.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, and
I was gonna say she didn't win that race, but man, she won a lot of hearts. She won a lot of hearts for her good work and for the steady hand that she put on there. One of the things, tell me a little bit about what did you learn from that quote unquote the loss of the political race, but the opportunity that you got, just a takeaway that was you carry with you even today.
Yeah, there is no regret in fighting a fight that is worthy. Right. And even when the days are long or the work is hard or the battle is very uphill, when it's all said and done, it's worth every minute of it because you were fighting for something that you believed in. So, that was a super worthwhile. We didn't win, but I don't regret a single minute of what we did on that campaign. It was a clean race. It was an issues-based race. It was a race that superseded all expectations. And at the end of the day, I think we did some good. And outcomes notwithstanding, it was worth fighting the fight because it was worthy. It was a worthy cause.
And you left that race with new friendships.
That's true.
To this day, right?
That's true. Yeah, lots of people that I still know today, and just as important, a lot of just like a wealth of knowledge that I never otherwise would have had the opportunity to get, and all this experience that I don't work on the campaign side of politics anymore. I work on the official side, which is different, but each colors the other. And that experience has actually made me a lot better at what I do now than I would have been without it. So, and hopefully, as I transition into, the legal practice, my hope is that my political experience will serve me in that endeavor in some way. I'm not 100% sure how, because the law and politics are very different animals.
Yeah.
Kind of similar in some ways, but pretty different
Right.
in a lot of important ones too. So we'll see how that shakes out.
And your parents are thankful for Susan Hutchinson giving you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's always nice when your kids can make a little bit of money.
Right.
All the endeavors. So that was a huge blessing. We're going to talk a little bit about Jan 6, right? Okay. And your experience, because you were actually present in the Capitol on the day of January 6th when the chaos broke out, and I want to hear a little bit about your experience. But before we go there, you have had, and this is just an old guy's perspective here. You've had an opportunity to work really closely with one of the rare statesmen in D.C.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Dan Newhouse and his leadership and how he has conducted himself through some really difficult times in politics.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about one. How'd you connect with Congressman Newhouse, and two, a little bit, if you'd give us a little inside baseball about your experience working under his leadership.
I first met Congressman Newhouse when I was applying to attend the military academy at West Point as a high schooler. And so for those that don't know, to go to the military academies or any of the service academies, you have to get a congressional nomination from your congressperson or your senator. And so I got to meet Congressman Newhouse through that process. Didn't end up going to West Point, obviously, but I did get to know him a little bit, got to know some of his staff. Ultimately ended up interning for him after my freshman year at the University of Washington. Got to know some of his staff a little bit more. And then when I graduated from UW in 2020, they just so happened to be looking for a staff assistant, which is, it's like the entry level job in a congressional office. You're the assistant to the staff of the congressperson. Okay. And so I went back there and got to work for him, and I was with him for a little under 2 years before I moved to my current position. But every day working for him was an honor. He's, like you said, one of, I think, the last true statesmen, which is a tough spot to be in today's political age, because there aren't many statesmen, and there's a lot of people who don't necessarily understand what that even means, let alone what the immense value of it is. And I was really quite honored to be a part of that operation, because the congressman and his team have always been very devoted to, first and foremost, serving the people of this district, which, for those who don't know, stretches all the way from the border of Canada to the border of Oregon. It's kind of the middle third of the state. So Okanagan, Douglas, Grant, Yakima, Klickitat counties.
Yeah.
Hope I'm not missing any. That would be embarrassing. But
and a wildly diverse group.
Very diverse.
Of strong opinions.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And a really unique area of the country, actually. So it was really special to be a part of that. And I was in that office for, I think, some of the darkest days in our country's history. Mm-hmm. Definitely some of the most divisive.
Okay.
And what was encouraging throughout all of it was that I got to work for someone who I really believed in and who I know was always doing what he thought was right. And that takes integrity, whether you agree with someone or not. It takes a lot of integrity to do what you think is right, even when it's not politically expedient. And I think people should appreciate that more than some do.
January 6th, chaotic day, and it sort of gets marked that way now in history, and it's depending on which side of the spectrum you are politically, and where this isn't about politics, it's about but there's some political motivation because your journey has been that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, just from your experience, what it was like as a kid, growing up in Yakima, and down the road here you find yourself working on Capitol Hill in our nation's in D.C. And then all of a sudden, kind of give us an overview of that day. You show up to work and it's a big day, and the wheels start to come off the bus. Tell us what you experienced.
They really did come off the bus very quickly. And we had gotten kind of warned, I guess you could say. The U.S. Capitol Police sends out these email updates periodically. They're called USCP alerts, and they'll send out things in advance if they're hearing of a demonstration or they're hearing of a potential threat to the Capitol. They're very, for the most part, overcautious is what which they should be. Their goal is to protect Congress, so that's why they are that way. But we had gotten one of these USCP alerts about a potential demonstration at the Capitol on January 6th. And, a lot of people forget that there was a lot of turmoil about January 6th before January 6th. Okay. And, the vote to certify the 2020 election or, object to certain states' slates of electors, the whole boondoggle. Lots of ink had been spilled, lots of words had been said, lots of interviews had been had on cable news and all of that before that day. So we knew there was going to be a demonstration. We knew there was probably going to be some drama on the floor. Certainly did not expect what it turned into. Because this was peak COVID, remember? This was right, people were still, we were still masking. The vaccine was not out yet, I don't think. And so it was still, scary COVID times. There's too many people in here. There's too many people in here. This manager is trying to get people out of this, but we're internally relocated and nobody really knows what's going on at this point. They all clear us. We go back to our office, and about 5 minutes later, I'd say, another Capitol Police officer comes banging on our door. You need to evacuate. You need to evacuate. And at this point, we know that there are protesters and that there's been some skirmishes with the police, but they're not yet inside the building. And I was kind of annoyed, actually. And I was the office emergency coordinator at the time. So this Capitol Police officer comes in 5 minutes after we get back to the office. You need to evacuate. You need to evacuate. And I look at him and I'm like, are you sure? Because they literally just cleared us to come back. And if I have to go round up my staff again for a false alarm, buddy, they're not going to be happy with me. And I'll never forget, now I regret being so smug, but I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, look in my eyes. The Capitol has been breached. And I got, my heart dropped. I was like, oh boy, okay, that's bad. I don't really know what that means, but that's not good. So anyway,
it's not just another day at the office.
Yeah, no, this is not just an inconvenience. This is a security risk for real. So anyway, rounded up the rest of the staff. We evacuated yet again. And this time we did not go to the cafeteria because the cafeteria is actually not really that secure of a location. We were told to lock ourselves inside of offices, barricade the doors and all of that. And it was very scary at the time because of the nature of what was happening was just scary. But it was also partially really scary because we didn't actually have a lot of details because a lot of the emergency alert systems that day were not working as designed. And so for the most part, even those of us inside the Capitol, the ones of us that were, supposed to be there, we were getting all the information off of Twitter or the news, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
We were there until probably about midnight, 1 a.m. when they finally let us leave. And my chief of staff dropped me off at home. And
so you were locked down for, it was
10,
a lot of hours.
10, 11 hours. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
long time. It was a long time.
And just sort of set the stage too, because I think in my mind, I really didn't understand that a lot of the staffers in DC, these are 20-somethings, predominantly 20-somethings.
Yeah.
These are folks who are politically motivated. They've gone to college and they've studied poli-sci, or they're aspiring law students, and that makes up the massive numbers of staffers.
Right.
And that's who you're locked down with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
One other thing I want to ask you this a little bit about, and then we'll move on off of this topic. What I saw, and one of the things that will forever be appreciative of as your dad, okay, is that it was really clear to me, and I didn't know this at the time, but the new houses, and I mean, I'm talking about Congressman Dan, as well as his wife Joan. Top priority. Their top priority is what is the safety and the security of my staffers, people like you, the 20-somethings that are there supporting them. Your experience on that?
Yeah, I mean the congressman and his wife were very. I mean, for sure, it was clear that their primary focus that day was safety of us, because for the most part, you're right. Like, congressional staff are 20-something, 30-somethings, and they were there. That was definitely their primary concern that day. And I'm really grateful to both of them for how they comported themselves that day and in the days after. And it was, it was not an easy time to be a congressional staffer, but it was actually it was a proud time to be a member of Team Newhouse.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right.
And a lot of people not a lot of people, everyone knows at this point what they think happened that day, what their opinion of that day is.
Right.
And, I have mine for sure, and they're colored by my experience that day.
Right.
But what, is, I think the key takeaway is that, throughout all of that, Congressman Newhouse and his wife were worried about other people, which is exactly how he has, not to turn this into like a soapbox situation, but that's exactly how he has, that's the approach that he's taken to representing his constituents as well.
Right.
So whether it's his staff, his constituents, whoever, he's always focused on someone else. And that's always a really exciting thing to be a part of.
Yeah.
Inspiring thing to be a part of. But that day it was particularly a proud moment.
Yeah, and it brings us right back to the character that you talk about, from the heart of the heart, right? The heart of Washington, Central Washington, and the good character and the characteristics and the humility and the decency that comes from people who are born and raised in this community. Last thing I'll touch real bit. I can't let a moment go. You had a mom in your life, right? And this is a shout out for moms to make sure especially these Central Washington moms that live in the heart and raise and love and take care of their kids in the heart of Washington. That was really supportive of you in this journey and continues to be, right? I know you're not disagreeing. Okay.
Yeah.
If you disagree, I'm gonna no.
No.
Tell me.
I disagree. I didn't even know there was a question.
Here's the question. Here's the question. How significant are moms to the little people that grow up to be big people that leave our community? How significant are those moms? And you can be real specific if you want to be about your own life and your own walk.
Yeah. I don't think that you can overstate how important a mom is in a young person's life. Yeah. So much of who you are, especially as a little person, right, comes from time spent with mom. And every family is different, and for some people that's going to be time spent with dad or grandma, whoever it is. In my life, that person that I spent a lot of my time with as a little one was my mom. And I think anyone who knows both of us would not be surprised to hear that at all, because a lot of who I've come to be is in a lot of ways almost like a caricature of her. not a caricature in a pejorative way, but just very much right out of the chapter and verse of, you know, the book of Laura Pickett. And so
she sowed a lot of love, a lot of love into you.
And a lot of what I love about this town and this community can really be tied back to her and a really, I think, clear choice that she made to involve me in this community and to seek to have this community be woven into my identity, and to sort of guide that process along. And I think I'm a lot better for it. So, you know, to answer your question of how important are moms, vary, and I think they can chart a course of instilling a love of family and community and service and good character, or they can not. I hope they will. I hope they do.
Yeah.
Especially moms here, because you have a lot of really good things to work with here to instill into your kids. I don't mean to sound self-aggrandizing or anything, but I'm really thankful for that I got a lot of the values of Yakima instilled in me by my mom growing up, because I think and I hope that it's made me better, and I think it would make a lot of people better.
Right on.
And I think it makes a lot of people from Yakima better. So,
Jack, fantastic chatting with you. Love you. Love to talk and share stories. Super excited about your journey and about where you're going and about wrapping up an amazing journey on the Hill and law school. And super excited with your mom to see where it's going to take you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing those stories and those insights. It means a lot. If you are a young person and you are growing up in the Yakima Valley and you want to learn more or about ways that you can become involved, don't hesitate to call us at LGP Law Firm. We practice a whole lot of law, but we also practice a whole lot of caring for this community because it matters and it's who we are. So feel free to search us out on lgplawfirm.com and you can learn more about who we are, what we do, and why we care so much about this community. Thank you.